0. Hello and welcome to the YASEcast. This is actually a very special episode because we are recording not on Tuesday but on a Sunday night because we had nothing to talk about on Tuesday. But we have a lot to talk about today because my partner and I, Julie, actually finished, finally, after a year of watching this, basically, almost a year, finished Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And so we have a full house tonight, so complete with guests. So returning to the pod, we have Vince.
Hello.
Julie.
Hi, it's me.
Savan.
Hey.
And you know him by many names. Woot Boost, Wheat Beat, White Beast.
Washir Bashir.
I wasn't ready for that one. How would you want to be referred for this episode?
How do I want to be referred to?
How do you want to be referred to?
Oh, I came with another one other than Washir Bashir. I can't remember what it is though. If I think of it, I'll drop it. But Washir Bashir and or Alex is fine.
Okay, and or Alex.
And or Alex.
All right, Washir Bashir is too good. So yeah, I'm. It's God. What the fuck? Where do you get these? They're so good. Every single one of them is so good.
Look, I've had a whole panoramic to think about these.
As long as one of us is being productive. All right. So this show has been living rent-free in my brain. I've talked about it multiple times on the pod. Vince has been watching it as well. And so I guess I want to kind of structure this episode as sort of a loose discussion with hitting a couple of points. Really, maybe doing an introduction. How did you end up watching Deep Space Nine? First, what is Deep Space Nine? And how you came to it. Then maybe, as time allows until we get sick of it, maybe go through and say what are some favorite things. Whether it's a favorite character, a favorite moment, a favorite episode, a favorite dad. There are a lot of dads in this show.
Many of them are not good.
Most of them suck. And then maybe polish off some strengths and weaknesses in general. I know I definitely have some thoughts of things that I thought the show could have done well, could have done better. And I know there's a section, if you've watched the documentary, where they kind of get into that of like, what did we do well? And also, where did we suck? And I agree and disagree with a little bit of that list. So that's kind of my thought. Seems like that's kind of cool. So who wants to take a crack at pitching what is Deep Space Nine, and how is it different than other Star Treks that exist in this sort of the golden age with like Voyager and the Next Generation, and also obviously DS9?
I can do that.
Do it, Julie. Go.
I will do that. Deep Space Nine is unique in this era of Star Trek because it takes place on a space station, first of all. All the other ones have been on ships exploring strange new worlds, like they do. And for a long time, it's kind of been considered like the black sheep of Star Trek. Because of that difference, it takes place following this planet Bajor, which is coming out of an occupation and suddenly becomes very geopolitically important because of its proximity to a newly discovered stable wormhole where we can go real far, farther than we've gone before.
Except for Voyager.
Except for Voyager, but, you know, they ran into some problems there, too.
Like Janeway.
Like Janeway. No one goes as far as Janeway. But Deep Space Nine comes close. And in going through this wormhole, we also discover strange new people who do not like us very much, who come back through the wormhole and start a war. And that's sort of the arc that the series goes through. Yeah, that's my what is Deep Space Nine.
It's a cool show, and kind of like you said, I think what I really liked is sort of in the front half of it, we're getting to a show that is very much about war and reconciliation. And sort of you've got this fair Bajor, and it's like they've just, you know, resisted this fascist occupation, and sort of what does it look like to try to get their world back together? And the Federation, who we know from other series, are sort of facilitating that process, which is where we get some of our main cast. And then as the wormhole operates, it turns out there are a race of goo people on the other side that are evil goo. They're fascist goo. They're bad gack.
They can take any form and any shape.
So And nestled with that is also some themes of religion and religiosity. The Bajoran people are very religious and have built a understanding of the universe around this species of aliens that live in the wormhole, which they call the Celestial Temple. Those aliens do not exist within linear time, and so they've kind of they're, for all intents and purposes, gods. And then the show eventually throws that out and says, no, they are literally gods. And things happen. It's cool. So with that, I guess that's kind of a loose pitch. So I was obviously very new to this. I only really started watching this because we started dating.
We did.
And she had the remote on Netflix at one night. And it was like, let's watch this show. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll be the good girlfriend and I'll watch the show. And then eventually
it was good.
Yeah, and it was good. And then eventually I was like, hey, you want to watch an episode? You want to watch a DS9? You want to hang out with your friend Washir Bashir?
I appreciate this because I'm pretty sure I told Morg to watch DS9 like 30 times in the past.
You did. You beat me to it. She got me to actually do it, but I will give you the credit. You've told me to watch it. Also, I started watching Voyager because you told me to.
It's Voyager.
It's an okay show.
Voyager is frightening to me.
Listen, they do some things and they go some different places.
The lizard's fucked.
Voyager will really hit the found family funny bone in a way that a lot of shows don't always end up doing successfully for me, so I can't help but love it.
Just look forward to the Voyager retrospective podcast next year when we finish Star Trek Voyager.
Yes.
And I'll have a long series about how this show just can't stop being racist to Chakotay.
Yeah.
It's bad.
It's got problems. It's got problems.
But back to Deep Space Nine.
But also how the show is really carried by the fact that its captain, unlike Benjamin Sisko, who is unflappable, unfuckwittable in Deep Space Nine, Captain Janeway is an absolute madwoman in space who routinely almost gets her whole crew killed to get a coffee.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
It's commendable energy. I hope I age that gracefully.
And at the end of the show, she's an admiral, so, like, you know...
It gets worse.
Really worse.
She's more unhinged at the end of the show.
They promote her for it.
I mean, that's just...
Anyway, so...
That's
like
just in
Federation
keeping with
politics.
tradition. Like, if I don't know if Morg has seen TNG, but, like, the whole... body snatcher bug people take over, like every series of Star Trek has some evil force in the admiralty of Starfleet. Every single time they need some like rules or something.
They need to screen people.
They need something. We don't know what.
It's a show. So I don't know, since you're sitting next to me, Julie, how did you come to DS9? Because this show aired back in 93 it started?
Mm-hmm.
It was back in the 90s initially when I was in kindergarten, and you're younger than me.
Yeah.
So is this show older than you?
Deep Space Nine? By like a month or two, yeah. All right, don't crumble into dust because you know how to do the podcast.
Yeah, you cast the pod. It's easy. Anyway, answer the question.
Yeah, okay. So I got into Star Trek via Voyager, which I watched a ton of reruns of when I was in middle school. That was my first exposure to Star Trek, and I was like, this is awesome. So I started watching a lot of Star Trek, not including Deep Space Nine for a long time. I watched through all of Voyager, a lot of Next Gen, all of the original series. I made an attempt at Enterprise and decided that I did not like it and stopped. I did not have faith of the heart. And then I was like, we're gonna put this on ice for a minute, and I sort of got into other things. And then years later, after having graduated and looking for a job, I was like, you know, it would be great. It would be great to watch Star Trek again and like not know what's gonna happen. And I was like, you know, I've never seen Deep Space Nine, and I had heard mixed things about it because it had always been kind of known as this like weird Star Trek, especially for that era that I was watching. And I was like, you know what, we'll give it a try, and I really liked it. So that was my intro to Deep Space Nine.
You don't have faith of the heart?
I don't have faith of the heart. I'll say that. I'll commit to that. I'll say that on the record.
Maybe that's the next thing I'll make us watch. We're gonna watch Enterprise.
You know what? I will do it for you.
Damn.
I just finished that. It was better than I remembered. It's still not good though.
That's what I've heard about Enterprise. It's better than you remember, but
that's not good.
I don't have good memories of Enterprise.
It's like playing Street Fighter 4. It's better than you remember, but maybe not still good.
I completely understand now.
All right. Civ, Alex, Bashir, do either of you want to or go out, or should we careen into maybe sharing favorite moments or episodes? Because I got some opinions.
I just want to say that I started
Union
watching the show because my mom watched it when I was a kid. So thanks, Mom, for introducing me to the good TV.
It's really interesting. Yeah. Sorry.
No worries. I'd like to put it out there that Julie is also the reason that I started watching this show. She is like the patient zero in my life for all things Star Trek, basically, because she had me sit through Star Trek, the one with the whales, which doesn't have another title. It is the one with the whales.
The one with the whales.
If you know, you know. We watched it on New Year's several years ago, and then when I was about to graduate college, she came to attend the graduation ceremonies and put on Star Trek Deep Space Nine Episode 1 one night. And I ended up just getting sucked into it in a sort of post-college depression. So, you know, maybe not the best way to start, but it got me through a number of months, and it's turned out to be one of my favorite shows, which was, I think, a little bit to be expected. I'm a huge fan of Ursula Le Guin and her books. So any sci-fi that sort of incorporates these themes of reconciliation, international politics in space, and post-colonialism, I think has automatic appeal to someone like me. But if anyone has been exposed to Ursula Le Guin's books before and enjoyed them, I think that they'll find something to like in this show, for sure.
Also, Ursula Le Guin is just very good. Just throwing that out there.
Alex, how did you come to Deep Space Nine? How did you come to exist here?
I came to Deep Space Nine, so I had actually I've had a handful of friends from college for a long time that have always been very into a lot of kind of sci-fi stuff, but Star Trek, being included in that. And I had never actually watched much Star Trek except, a couple episodes like here and there with them. I think I watched Discovery season 1 with them, but that was kind of like the most I had seen. And then I noticed that they had just like a ton of Star Trek on Netflix at the start of the past year. So I spent like the first half of the year watching through The Next Generation, which I enjoyed quite a bit. And then after that, I had like this forking path of like, okay, I'll try a little bit of Deep Space Nine and I'll try a little bit of Voyager. And I kind of kept going on either path until Deep Space Nine kind of finally kicked in. And I was like, oh, okay, no, this is where I want to be right now. I want to watch this.
It's a good show. My background is kind of similar in that I've kind of been aware of Star Trek mostly through the Futurama episode, and kind of in that perception of kind of floating in and out of like, oh yeah, like BBC has a back-to-back episode of TNG, so I'll watch like an odd episode of not having any sense of where it falls in the series, and that's how they've been structured. They're very episodic. And then DS9, I think, caught me off guard with how much it emphasized really what would become prestige television and like Game of Thrones and all that of, you can't just like stop in and be like, oh, I heard this episode is good. It's very much set up with a arc with both within seasons and across seasons. There are relationships with characters that develop. There are relationships that are never good, but still happen. And it really grew on me in a way, like I was saying, where I thought that this was going to be kind of the show we put on when we want whatever. And then eventually I'm like, no, quiet. Like I'm focusing on the thing. Did Did you call me a thought?
Yeah.
No, you thought that it would be.
Oh.
background noise. You just wanted me to call you a thought.
Yes, I did.
Okay. You can retcon that if you want.
Edit, Julie.
For what it's worth, I was kind of the same way, where I ended TNG and I was like, okay, that was good, but I always kind of wondered, like, I wanted more out of like the individual like relationships and conflicts. Like I always wanted to know what happened between like the Federation and the Romulans. And there's always this like, you know, that dissonance there, and it was like repetitive or not repetitive, but it was, you know, long lasting. And when I started Deep Space Nine, I didn't realize that's what I wanted, because I was like, oh, they're not going through space, they're just like at this one place. And I was like, oh wait, no, this is exactly what I like about the show.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's exactly. I've always felt the same thing, where having that episodic background with Star Trek, I would be sitting back and thinking to myself, like, well, that was cool, but like none of it really matters. And that's how I felt about Voyager, starting that after Deep Space Nine, where I'm like, well, that was cool, but this doesn't matter.
We never see the lizard babies again.
I don't want to see the lizard babies ever again. I don't want that awkward moment where Janeway comes up and hits on Paris after they fucked his lizard people. I don't need that.
Siv, you probably skipped that episode.
I did.
I think I started you at post the bad part of Voyager.
So Julie told me to skip it.
Oh yeah, don't skip episodes. Just watch it. Just deal with it.
There are two very different experiences you can have with Voyager.
Julie only wanted to protect my innocence, and I respect her for that.
She wanted the same for me, but I said, no, I want to stare into the abyss. And the abyss was a bunch of lizards staring back at me.
Oh, the things you'll find in the abyss.
This is the worst version of Dark Souls. Yeah. All right. So.
Favorites?
I think favorites.
Strengths and weaknesses?
Favorites, strengths and weaknesses. I wanted to keep it vague. I know that Red Letter Media did like a very long form TNG thing where they were like, what are your top 10 episodes? And it took forever. It's like a 5-hour video. So I wanted to kind of keep this looser and just keep it sort of like favorite acts, whether it's a thing or a place or whatever. Your favorite Vic Fontaine song. Because everyone loves Vic Fontaine. He's a good... He's a very good character. Surprisingly, a very good character. So, anyone want to kick that off? Got a favorite X you're burning to talk about?
Morgan and I talked about Ezri before she started season 7. And I don't know if she's like my favorite character, but I do like her a lot. And it was strange because usually, you know, when they bring in like a new character like that, when I originally watched it, I thought Jadzia was really cool, and I still think Jadzia is really cool. But you watch, you know, you're with this character for like 6 seasons, and then you get to the end, and she just dies in a really stupid way, and they bring in the new character, and you're like, well, fuck. That's almost never good. Everybody always hates it. But I really liked that, like, they did a good job with it, and they made Ezri actually cool. And maybe part of that is because the way they were able to tie her back into being sort of like part of Jadzia. But I cranked out the last season just before this, so I would have some things to talk about. And they really gave her like a lot of episodes, which I think helped. Mm-hmm. But really, the reason I wanted to bring her up is her first episode, I think, is kind of funny, where they have her, you know, she shows up, and she's basically a crazy person at this point because she just had like 8 new personalities installed last week. And Cisco's like, yeah, go do a therapy on Garrick. You'll be fine. It's fine. And so she goes and does that. And there's a part where, you know, Garrick is mad at her because she's trying to like do the therapy thing to him. And he's like, you know, you're not Jadzia. Like, you don't deserve to be like part of her life or whatever. She was vital and powerful, and you're just like a weak, stupid little girl. And I never realized this before watching it like literally this week, but Garrick is like the audience stand-in character in that episode. It's like a little bit of a meta thing, because that's the thing, like you bring this new character, everybody's like, you're not that character, I hate you, I want my old person back. And it was kind of neat how Garrick, like, filled that role both like in the episode and in kind of a meta way. Also, brief sidebar on that episode, she takes Garrick to the Hollow Suite for therapy, and he says that it's stupid, and I know this is fake, so it won't work, and it's dumb. And then 2/3 of the way through the season, Nog loses his leg, and he ends up going to the Hollow Suite for therapy. And late in that episode, when he's been in there for a while with like Vic, Ezri walks in, and she's like, "God damn it, Nog. You got to get out of the Hollow Suite. This isn't real life. You have to leave." And I like the little like callback role reversal thing. It was pretty good.
I had missed both of those points. I never thought about Garrick as like an audience stand-in in that situation.
That's a really good point, though.
Yeah.
Because that is definitely when Ezri shows up, you're like, who are you?
Yeah.
And she doesn't know either.
She definitely doesn't. There's really good stuff. So I guess if you're listening to this and haven't watched Deep Space Nine, why? That's the first question. The second piece, I guess, I think Ezri in that bit, and especially in those first episodes, really hit home the things I really like about the Trill. And the things that they had a couple early episodes with Jadzia about, like the one where she's on trial for things that Curzon did. And Sisko has to try to like make a legal argument that Jadzia and Curzon are different people. And then the series never really, and even Sisko as a character, never really seems to be able to settle whether or not he really believes that. And like how, so the whole premise with Trill is that you've got the person is a host of a symbiote, and then the symbiote carries the memories of every previous host. So initially you have Jadzia, who has all these 7 lifetimes of memories. Like Vince said, she dies, and then in the last season, the new host comes in, but ordinarily in the species, the Trill have like decades of preparation before they are joined to prepare them for having 8 lifetimes of memories. And then Ezri is kind of shut into this situation where all of a sudden she's like, I don't know if I'm a man or a woman. I have memories of being a father and a mother. I don't know what names to respond to. And I am trying to sort out who I even am anymore. And it's so good.
It's to the point she doesn't even like know what foods she likes anymore. Like there's that running bit they have where like she'll go to the replicator and be trying to order something. She's like, no, wait, like...
I don't like that.
Yeah. And, like, this past host was vegetarian, and this is meat, and I don't know how I feel about this now. And it's kind of a funny bit, but it's also really real.
Yeah, me too.
You're all kind of cutting out.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
I mean, as long as you got it recorded locally, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
I like the third episode with her, where they're on a shuttlecraft, and she rolls up to a replicator, and she goes, I'll have 1 Ractagino, and then she grabs it, takes a drink, and goes, I hate Ractagino. And Jake's like, why did you order it?
I was just thinking about that.
We've all been there, though.
She wants the grown-up drink. Yeah, Ezri, it's like we were talking about this before we recorded, but you were worried that you had spoiled that character for me by hyping her up. And then after an episode or 2, I was like, wait, no, Ezri rules. I like her more than I like Jadzia.
Yeah, we were talking about, it was right after Morg finished season 6.
Oh.
I was like, ooh, you're about to get to the character I really like. And as soon as I said it, sometimes you tell people like, oh, like you're going to get to the good part. It's so sick. And it kind of like biases you to like you want to dislike it now. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh no, I hope I didn't ruin it. But I'm very glad that I didn't, because Ezri is very good.
Yeah.
I always really liked the episode where she works with Duran, especially in contrast to the episode where Jadzia rejects that past life and finds it so deeply inimical to who she is as a person. And yet Ezri is the one who is able to accept him. I thought that was such an interesting point of characterization and divergence from Jadzia and everything that we had seen with her for the previous 6 seasons.
Yeah. Of all the lives that the Dax symbiote has lived, one of them was the Phantom of the Opera.
The party worm, Dax, also known as the Phantom of the Opera.
Aggressively bisexual party worm, Dax.
Hot take. Curzon is Raoul.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit. I don't know. Who else has a favorite? I think we all agree Ezri rules. I think that's universal.
Hard agree.
Yeah.
I was kind of I've been thinking about this over the last couple days, and I've actually gone through like 3 stages now of like different like potentially favorite characters. So like the initial one for me is like I just love Garrick. He's just like such an interesting like addition. He's just like he's so chaotic, but he's principled, right? He loves Cardassia. Principled is maybe not the the right word, considering the way that he acts, but just like he's very he's very loyal, and he brings so much to the table in terms of like what they can do with writing him and things like that. There's so many like good Garrick moments, like when Bashir tells him the story of the boy who cried wolf, and he's like, well, what do you think the lesson is? It's like, well, it's obviously, if you keep lying, then people aren't going to believe you. And he's like, well, no, to me, the answer is never tell the same lie twice. And it's just like stuff like that. It's just like, it's like kiss his fingertips, kind of stuff. So that's like my initial one. Then I was kind of thinking about it, and similar but different. I actually really like Gul Dukat a lot.
I agree.
He's actually
Gul Dukat is a great
because he's actually
character.
very similar. Yeah. He's like actually very similar. It's just that he's very selfish in his motives. I think that's like the main difference between them.
And very self-important.
Extremely self-important. I mean, he spends the last 3 seasons trying to convince everyone that he was a friend to Bajor. He was trying to get the restrictions removed, and all the stuff about how he was so kind during the occupation, and all of that. So I actually have a soft spot for him as well. But just 30 minutes ago, I turned on an episode with Mirror Kira Nerys, and I just get tingles when she steps on screen. So it's like, how can I not love bisexual icon Mirror Nerys?
She's pretty great.
I've mentioned this before in like unrelated episodes, but I really like body swap episodes, and like mirror universe episodes are kind of like a subgenre of that, I guess. Because I feel like when you watch especially a long running show, you kind of forget how much these people are really like actors, right? Like that's just that person to you. It's kind of whatever. And sometimes when you have that like big personality change, there's an Evil Ezri episode in season 7. And those personality swaps I think are cool because you really get to see them like, kind of like flex the acting chops.
Yeah, and one of the things that's really cool about DS9 is they get to do that like so many different times, because each person plays their main character. They usually play a mirror universe character. At some point, they're a changeling. And then also, for some reason, O'Brien is a spy during one episode.
Okay, that's
they get to do, different jobs.
I think
not to mention
special attention, I think, should be given to Avery Brooks for not only playing Cisco and Mirror Cisco, and then I don't remember if he ever gets changelinged, but Benny. I cannot emphasize enough how much I love Far Beyond the Stars as an episode. It's an amazing piece of TV, just in general. But his performance in that hits such a tender spot for me. And in general, he is a magnificent actor. I think that he deserves so much credit for his performances across the show.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Can I talk about Garrick for a minute?
Let's talk about Garrick for a minute.
I thought it was funny that Alex mentioned his favorite character changing, because that also definitely happened to me. And before Ezri was my favorite character, it was definitely Garrick.
Plain and simple Garrick.
We mentioned the Mirror Universe episode. In old Star Treks, a lot of times, the Mirror Universe episode, it really is a mirror, right? Like, the good character is evil, the evil character is good. And I don't know if like canonically DS9 alternate universe is like technically not the mirror, like it's a different alternate universe or whatever, but they didn't really do that in this show. And that season 7 mirror universe episode, they have Grand Nagus Sek gets kidnapped by like evil Kira, and Quark and Rom have to go rescue him. And, you know, they get captured and like shenanigans ensue. And there's one part where evil Commander Worf is like, okay, Mirror Garrick, go torture them to death now. Like, get them out of here. And like Mirror Universe Garrick is still like an evil conniving bastard, but he's like stupid. And he gets tricked by Quark and Rom because like, oh, you know, you should meet our Garrick. He's so much cooler than you. And he's just like, I hate this. And they just get him like so mad that he, you know, kind of lets them escape. And I thought that was really funny. Also, cool thing about the Cardassians. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I really like Garrick.
You're fine.
Cool thing that DS9 does is kind of the way it the way they give you details about the alien cultures. And the other Star Treks do it and stuff, but like I don't really remember them really getting into like the literature and stuff, like that kind of thing as much. Mm-hmm. And Garrick and Bashir become pretty good friends, and like to the point where like Garrick is giving Bashir, Garrick is giving Bashir like Cardassian literature, like, oh, you know, read this. This is our greatest work. And there's an episode called The Wire.
Repetitive.
Yeah.
We have to talk about
there's a couple of episodes where they talk about different Cardassian books, but that one is like, I think it's the first one where he gives him this book called The Never-Ending Sacrifice, as Julie mentioned, and Bashir reads it and he tells him like, oh, like I just hate this, like it's so repetitive. All it is a character is born, they grow old, they do a bunch of like loyalty to the state stuff, they die, then their kids go and do the same thing. And Garrick's just like, yeah, that's why it's like, that's what makes it good. The repetitive epic is the greatest form of Cardassian literature. And it is like, you know, you watch the show and they are like, they're just literally a fascist alien state. And like their literature and like their court system and their government all like reflect that. And it's cool that they really put all that into the show. And you really get that detail and insight into this entirely, you know, made up alien culture that they built. And that kind of comes through, and it like, it's like, it reinforces the way the characters act. You know, like the characters act a certain way because of their culture, but in Deep Space Nine specifically, that culture actually like reflects back on them, and you can really see why they act that way. And over the course of the show, you know, when Garrick, at first he's really like, he hates being here, and then he starts kind of like working for the Federation. He has a breakdown over that. And there's like the episode where when Cisco kind of starts like, he doesn't really turn evil, but he crosses some lines. There's that episode where they have the Romulan ambassador coming, and Cisco's like, oh, we gotta like do this whole thing to get the Romulans into the war. Garrett, can you help? And he's like, okay, I can help, but we're gonna do some bad shit. And like, I don't know, the way the culture reflects the characters and the characters reflect the culture, like it just works really well for me. I liked it a lot, and Garrick is a good character. Thank you for attending my TED Talk.
Thank you for giving the TED Talk. Yeah, I love Garrick. I've had the same phase. I guess does everyone go through a Garrick phase?
Yes.
Everyone goes through a we love Garrick phase, and you don't really exit it.
It's continual for me.
It blew me away when I found out that apparently he was supposed to be a one-off character, because he adds so much to the show, kind of like Vince was saying, and also Alex was saying, of the whole, his theming around, he's so mysterious to begin with. Like when he comes in, he has an aggressively homoerotic scene with Julian Bashir, which is hilarious, and everyone should watch it. Even if you haven't watched it, go watch that scene. It is so fucking funny. But later on, as things build, we get through Bashir, who at that point in his career and life, before he's turned 30, is very naive. And he's like, I would like to know more about you, Mr. Garrick. And you realize that even as a viewer, you don't really know much about this character. You always think you do. And then you find out something, and it's like, oh, that was a lie. Oh, that was a lie. And there's that great scene where Garrick is dying as a response to, isn't it that he has like an implant from the Cardassian government that is slowly killing him?
Well,
Yes.
it was a thing to make him like resistant to interrogation, to just make him like very high and happy.
Oh yeah, he's
And
addicted.
And he was so miserable on
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine that he just turned that on all the time.
And it's
he develops a crippling addiction, and it almost kills him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's dying in withdrawal, and he's giving Bashir all this information about his life. And then at the end, he kicks the habit, and Julian asks him, and it's like, so is anything that you told me the truth? And
Or
he
was
looks
it
at
all
him and he
lies?
says, or no, was it all lies? And it's like, oh, it's.
Because it
No. He says, oh my god, I just had
I
it.
know.
I know the last line.
Yeah, the line is especially the lies.
Yeah, it's because
Especially the lies.
Garrick has told him these 3 different stories which all contradict each other, and all paint Garrick in a very different light. And then at the end, Bashir's like, which one of those was true? Were any of them true? And that's what Garrick says. It's like, they were all true. And Bashir says, even the lies? And it's especially the lies.
We have no choice.
So
We have
good.
no choice but to stand Garrick, a simple tailor,
A simple tale.
a simple tailor.
A simple Taylor.
I do want to go back and talk more about Far Beyond the Stars at some point, though.
We will talk
We will.
about it, but
Once we're done talking about Garrick, we do need to give him the attention he deserves.
he has this perpetual knife cat face. He always looks like he's about to stab someone, all the time. That's the face. That's the exact face.
Well, Doctor, it always looks like he was just off screen and he just did just a little bit of coke, or he just just a little bit of something to get his eyes to pop that way.
The facial acting for all the Cardassians is very eyes wide open and a little disconcertingly lizard-like. But with Garrick, it comes out particularly much because of his mischievous, impish nature, I guess.
He's a knife cat. But I guess on the tone of other Cardassians, I also have a very pronounced soft spot for Gul Dukat. I think that he's one of my favorite characters. Just overall, he's introduced as sort of this like all Cardassians. He's ultimately a fascist, but he's a fascist that believes his own lies. Up until a scene late in the series where he actually has a breaking point and Sisko gets him to admit that he's full of shit and that he hates the people of Bajor and wants to kill them all and would have if he had been given the opportunity. I guess even then you could say that that's like him in this spiraling psychotic breakdown following the death of his daughter. He believes that he is a mercy, and he believes that whenever someone grills him on his actions and the eliminationism that he was doing to the Bajoran people, he's like, oh, no. It would have been so much worse if someone else was doing that. I was a mercy. Look, the people of Bajor would have been wiped out had I not been there. I am their savior, Nerys. We have so much in common. We both love the Bajoran people.
He also loves the Republic, don't you know?
They both love the same. I loved your mother, Nerys. Don't you know? It's also revealed later on that Kira's mother, he calls her in her quarters to tell her that, oh yeah, Kira, all those things you've heard about your mother, they're not true. She was actually my lover. Your mother loved me. Just calls her up. Hey, did I ever tell you about you and your mom and me?
In the middle of the night.
Oh, you didn't know?
You didn't know?
Yeah, he's a brilliantly written character, and for all of his kind of goofy shit-headedness, has genuine layers that are really allowed to flourish across this very serialized point. And then he becomes the Antichrist.
There's this guy.
It's funny because that sounds like a joke.
There's this guy on YouTube, Steve Shives, who does a bunch of Star Trek content. I can't remember if he has an episode about Gul Dukat, but he does have an episode about Odo, who was my original favorite character until I got older and realized he's a cop. But
he's definitely unfortunately.
I was just thinking this time through, there's kind of an interesting, I don't know if parallel is exactly the right word because it's sort of a contrast really. But between Odo and Gul Dukat, and exactly what you were saying about Gul Dukat, where every time somebody, Kira's like, well, you murdered all of my people. And he's like, no, it would have totally been worse if I wasn't there. And everybody in the show is like, yeah, like, okay, Gul, sure, man, you're right. Just like they really let him know that they do not agree with that. But at the same time, Odo, who was the Gestapo for the Cardassians, he's kind of in the same position where he was responsible, and there's episodes about, how he, like, whether they were guilty or not, he, like, solved a crime, and those Bajorans were executed by the Cardassians. But everybody always gives him this, like, oh, but, Odo is just, like, he wasn't interested in that. He was just interested in justice. Just ultimate justice guy. But he's really in the same situation. Like, it's not really true. It doesn't matter how, like, impartial or fair he was. He was prosecuting crimes for the occupying fascist regime. And it's not, like, it doesn't matter if it was better because he was there or not. In the same way, it doesn't matter that Dukat, it was better under Dukat. But it's interesting how, everybody like, gives it to Dukat, but they kind of give Odo a pass on that for essentially doing the same thing. Maybe at a smaller scale, but, like, it's still not good.
It's one of the... that was going to come up as a weakness of the show for me, is that Odo gets a pass. Like, he gets a pass. Even Kira just is sort of like, at the end of that episode, when they go over and they show through some timey-wimey nonsense how Odo may have been responsible for killing innocent people and putting them to death. Kira's like, so, like, was it just these 3 people? And Odo looks at her and says, I don't know. And then the next episode, Kira's just fine with it. And I would have liked to see more of that, especially from Kira, to really grill Odo on that, of just, look, like, you can say that you were impartial, but you were not. Something about all cats are beautiful. Yeah, ACAB. All cats are beautiful.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true.
There is a real like cognitive dissonance in the way the show treats Odo, because there are these episodes where they sort of go back and they have Odo confront the occupation and his role in it, and then the show is sort of like it takes this treatment of that where they're like, oh no, anyway, and it just kind of keeps going,
Yeah.
And those episodes where he does confront it and they do address it are very good, and it's done very well. It just doesn't continue from that point. They sort of do that once and then leave it in that spot of like, well, anyway, moving on. And you don't really see it affect Odo's relationship with other characters, and you don't see Odo confront that in himself as much as he could. He does a little bit. And that could be something that maybe could have been developed a little bit better.
It sort of toes the line of making a systemic critique without actually going over the edge of it, because they could, I think that in a better world, for instance, you could have a Cardassian character point this out, that because Odo is on their side, they're willing to not prosecute him for any misdeeds that he might have done as an agent of the Cardassian occupation. They have episodes about Bajoran collaborators in which those collaborators are utterly despised, and yet Odo is still allowed to remain in this sort of awkward zone in between a collaborator and an ally.
I don't think he's in an awkward zone. I think he's a collaborator.
I mean, he is a collaborator.
Yeah, but the show doesn't treat him
in terms of the way that the show treats him.
Yeah, the show is like, but Odo's one of the good collaborators.
They just don't they don't do the work to put him there. They're just like, they assert it. Be like, but Odo's a good guy, actually. And you look at it and you're like, but is he? Is he, though?
But you know who's a good guy?
Who's a good guy?
Actually, a group of characters that I would like to talk about. Maybe we can get to Far Beyond Our Stars, but I want to talk about Ferengi, too. Because I think... I'm also full of thoughts, but going way back to what Vince said, one of the pieces that I have really liked, and I didn't think about until you said that, was how the series treats culture and how culture kind of produces certain characters. And I think that does a really excellent job of that with Worf in particular, who is the Klingon who's raised by humans, but so his association with Klingon culture is via that media. He's listening to the operas and he knows all of the stories and the songs. He is absolutely the kid that would try to do a Kamehameha when he was a kid because he watched Dragon Ball Z. He believes the legend to be literally true, and getting to see those bits of culture with how Klingons operate really elucidates his character in some cool ways too. So the show does a great job of that. But also, Far Beyond Our Stars is so good, and I want to talk about it too.
Is it time?
It might be time. This is Julie's favorite episode. Maybe favorite piece of media? Would you say favorite episode?
It's a favorite science fiction piece of media. If I had to pick one, it might actually be Far Beyond the Stars. And Civ, I think you mentioned it's your favorite too. So maybe we can kind of tag team this one.
I think it probably moved me most in the show, and it kind of has to be my favorite in a way. I think that there are definitely other standouts, but this is an episode that I always end up coming back to, and it still really hits. So
I feel like we should maybe, the premise of Far Beyond the Stars is that Captain Sisko is having these visions where he is now a black science fiction writer in 1950s, 1960s San Francisco, and all of the other characters in the show.
I think he's in New York.
Is it in New York?
Yeah, they mentioned that he's living uptown. That's the only reason.
Only New York has an uptown. It's like only New York has bodegas.
He's in America, in the 1950s.
Deep Space Bodega.
Space Bodega.
That's what Quark's running, isn't it?
What other station can you go to when you need a banana, some drain cleaner,
and one-ply toilet paper?
That's the Klingon restaurant they always talk about.
Yeah. That was the Klingon restaurant's great, but yeah, no. So you have Sisko, who has already in the real world of not Star Trek. Sisko has kind of, as a character, made history as being the first black captain in a Star Trek series, and then they have this episode, Far Beyond the Stars, where Sisko doesn't really, it's not that he travels back in time, it's that he's having these visions of being the science fiction writer named Benny, and all of the other characters in the show end up kind of cast in these different roles, where some of them are other writers. You have Odo as actually the editor in this little sci-fi magazine that they're writing in. You have Gul Dukat and Weyoun, another one of the main villains, are cast as these corrupt sort of city cops, and just as it ends up being kind of I read it as a commentary on science fiction as a way to view the world, and why is science fiction important, and why are stories important, because this episode sort of follows Benny through him trying to write Deep Space Nine, and trying to publish the short story of Deep Space Nine starring Captain Benjamin Sisko in this magazine, and in the end, they don't publish it. They pulp the run, and they say it's because you wrote a black main character, the Odo character. The editor is this could start a race war, or something like that. And you see, Benny really has this great scene, best piece of acting by Avery Brooks, I think, in the entire series, where he breaks down and he's saying that you don't understand, the story is real. Like, I created the story in my mind, and you can't take that from me because it's real. And that is a thing that has really lived rent-free in my head ever since I saw it, is this idea of, like, the story is real in a way that you almost don't have vocabulary to talk about, but in a way that's very important, if that makes sense. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about that.
The line that always gives me chills at the end of that episode is where he, while having this breakdown in front of his co-workers, in front of the editor of this magazine, in front of all these people who are important to his professional life, he simply cries out, "I am a human being." And the first time I watched that, it sort of drove me to the point of tears almost, because there are those moments where, when you feel viscerally marginalized, and that's the thing that you want to say, and hearing that from the script always just really wrenches me. And there's a sort of retrospective that happens at the end of the episode where Benjamin Sisko then questions, what if we all are pieces of this writer's imagination? And I think, I can't exactly remember, because I believe his father says something to sort of reassure him about this idea. Thought. Yeah, he says, like, well, that's a scary thought, but it doesn't really dispel the idea of it. But I think it's sort of a delightful way to end that episode, because it validates the reality that Benny is searching for throughout the episode. Where, a black man can be in this important role. Even if it exists inside of his head in the context of the episode, it exists in reality in the larger context of the show. Which, to me, sort of gives a sense of hope at the end of what otherwise would be a really despondent story, I think.
Like, it doesn't... It feels like, describing just the events of the story, that this is like a really bleak kind of story, and it isn't in the end. It's not really a happy story, but in the end, like, having Deep Space Nine and cutting back to Sisko and having that story exist in some fashion feels like kind of an act of defiance and an act of hope in a way that's just I think about it all the time. I love that episode.
There's a moment additionally where the character who shares the same actor as Sisko's father but is a preacher in the Benny sequences, he's comforting Sisko in the ambulance, and he tells Sisko that he is both the dreamer and the dream. And to me, it's an interesting commentary on the way that writing science fiction sort of works, where it's a little bit aspirational, and the writer itself, like themselves, they are the aspiration. You embody it by bringing it into being, I guess.
It's an episode that, the reason it is my top favorite of Deep Space Nine, and also of maybe science fiction in general, is just that it leaves me so much to think about in so many different areas. And there's even like these little touches too, just the way they cast the characters and the way they sort of like, as Sisko's having this vision, sometimes the characters will like flash back to their Deep Space Nine makeup as they're delivering a line in this like old Earth setting, and it's just very well executed, on top of, I think, being a really interesting concept.
Also, Goldu Cop.
Goldu Cop.
They really went there.
They really went there. Which, for a show that was airing in the 90s, that episode aired around the time. So there is a scene also where Sisko, as an author, as Benny, is beaten by Cop Wayun and Cop Dukat, following they have killed the same actor as his son in the series for trying to break into a car. They shoot him dead, and then when Cisco has a response to, or Benny has this response to this kid that he knew having been murdered in the street, he's beaten by the same cops that killed him. And contextualizing the show, that aired around the same time that the Rodney King beating also broke. So it's a powerful episode, both on its own, but even like where it exists in contemporary bits. We were watching, there's a documentary, like Things We Left Behind or whatever. It's on Netflix or on YouTube. It's great. But one of the pieces they bring up is that Cisco's blackness was actually something they tried to tone down in the early seasons of the show. They required that Avery Brooks presented clean shaven, that he had to have hair. And then around like season 3, he shows up with the goatee and the shaved head, and that becomes the iconic look. And it's not something that I had considered, but it was something that the writers were considering in having, a black lead of this series. And then to have an episode later on that comes out, and I believe Avery Brooks even directed Far Beyond Our Stars.
Yes, he did.
I think he did.
Yeah, he did. It's an extraordinary piece, and it's something that Julie had kept hyping up to me as her favorite episode.
I was so worried that I had oversold it, but...
You undersold it. I was floored by it, because like you're both saying, it's a great piece of Star Trek, but it's also a great piece about Star Trek in science fiction, as having this imaginative capacity to see maybe there's a post-scarcity future out there that's cool, and there's a bar with a cool guy named Quark and his radicalized communist brother. Which is one of the things that I would also like to talk about at some point, because I think the Ferengi plot lines in DS9 are...
There's something else.
Vastly underrated.
They're fucking weird. They're fucking great. I love that. Can we pivot?
I think we're good to pivot.
I did want to say one thing about Cisco. I like that they you mentioned the writers really were considering that. It's not just those episodes necessarily either. Like that really is a thing throughout the show. All the way through season 7, there's an episode where they have to go into the Las Vegas program to save Vic Fontaine.
Oh, that's
and
right.
There's like several episodes leading up to that point where Cisco's like, are they really doing the Vegas thing again? I don't want to go. And they make a point that he's like never going. And after like 15 episodes of him kind of like making comments about it, his girlfriend there, I forget her name.
Cassidy?
Yeah. She's like, your friends are doing a thing. Like, just come on. Like, you got to help your friends. Just go do the damn thing. What's the big deal? And he brings up like, 1962 or whatever it was, Vegas was like not nice to black people. The civil rights movement was in its infancy rather. And, I just like don't like the program because of that. And she's like, well, it's not like that though. It's the real life wasn't like that, but the program isn't. And he says, yeah, and that's the lie. So like they kind of keep that character trait going throughout the show, which is, it's not just like a one-off thing for that episode.
It's, now that I think about it too, don't they in early seasons make a point that he also has like a very established collection of African art in his office too?
Yes.
Yeah. Cisco rules.
And I think I don't know, but I would suspect that that's something that Avery Brooks himself kind of brought to the character. And it's just one way that like Avery Brooks is a great actor and he really makes Cisco come alive in ways that are really interesting that I don't think the writers themselves would have come up with necessarily.
Yeah, from the documentary that Morg mentioned, at least what I got out of watching that, it kind of sounded like, they wrote some episodes and then just let Avery Brooks like do whatever he wanted with it, basically, which was good.
As they should,
It kind of blows my mind that I know that people always talk about, Picard, and now that I'm talking out loud, I'm blanking on his name, and it's embarrassing. Patrick Stewart, that's his name. Thank you, Julie. That Patrick Stewart is like this incredible actor, and like the greatest actor to ever touch Star Trek, and he brings so much prestige to TNG, which is true. But up until watching the show, I had never heard someone talk about Avery Brooks that way.
He's better, frankly.
Like his monologue in The Pale Moonlight Am I thinking of the same one? The closing monologue where after he's done all this shit with Garrick, the whole episode is a confessional where he is talking directly to the camera, retroactively telling you these are the things that I have done and the crimes that I have committed before I sat down to record. And then he has this chilling scene at the end where he looks into the camera and says, and you know what? I can live with it. And then tells the camera to delete his recording. It is an unbelievably well acted scene. Chef's kisses. Chef's kisses.
It's so good.
So good. I remember that so vividly. Just that very last computer. Delete that entire personal log. It's so good.
I was floored. So I had been spoiled. So Julie had also been trying to keep that episode for me.
I tried so hard. And
you failed. So
it's not my fault. It's not my fault.
But I had been spoiled for everything up until the closing monologue. So I knew all the shit he does. I knew all the crimes he had committed. I knew that he is complacent in assassinating a Romulan senator.
Complicit.
Thank you. I can't talk. I just record. But I didn't know about that closing bit where he's like, I've done all this shit and you know what? It's fucking fine. If that's what it takes to win this war, I can do it.
He'd do it again.
I would do it again. I can live with it. I was stunned by that acting. Also stunned by the Ferengi.
Can I just, as a final note on Avery Brooks's acting, since we compared him to Patrick Stewart, is I would really love to see Avery Brooks doing some Shakespeare. Like,
oh, please.
Think about that for a second.
Please.
Think about him as, like, Macbeth.
You're speaking my language.
That. I know.
I listened, this is kind of a sidebar. There's a production of Richard II done by the Public Theater last year. It's on any podcasting app that you use. Mm-hmm. It's really excellent. They had, I think, all the principal characters were played by people of color, and their Richard II was amazing. I want to see Avery Brooks play Richard II. I have a total sort of there's a little nail in my head, and that has that label attached to it. I would love to see it.
All right. So, I guess the one last real favorite bit that I want to talk about, because it wraps a bunch of stuff together, and is one of my personal favorite episodes. There's a race of people in Deep Space Nine. They're the Ferengi. They are basically they're anti-Semitic stereotypes, is what they are. It's unfortunately it's kind of hard to overlook that. They are a race of, they're basically anarcho-capitalists. They believe that only greed is the only moral system, and that if you make profit off it, it's fine. And along the story, one of these Ferengi, Ram, the brother of the bartender Quark, is radicalized to Marxism and unionizes the employees of Quark's bar, which ultimately upends Ferengi society, and he becomes their leader as Grand Nagus in a social democratic system. And it ties together so many good bits. He has this great scene where he's trying to hype himself up, and he just takes up his pad and he just reads, "Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains," which he gets from O'Brien, who plugs him into the idea of you know what y'all need? You need a union. So of course it's the Irish guy who tells him that he needs to form a union, and then eventually and then O'Brien watches him over the whole like a proud papa, as he's watching their picket line. And when Worf and there's a scene where Julian and O'Brien are watching people if they're gonna cross the picket line. Worf walks by and they bet on it, and O'Brien's like, "No, Klingons. Proud, strong sense of honor. He's not going to cross that picket line." And then when he does, O'Brien rolls up his sleeves and fist fights him in the bar. We don't deserve Miles O'Brien. No one deserves Miles O'Brien.
Miles is
it's true.
We can't.
I love the Ferengi, and from that documentary, one of the bits that I found out is that blanking on his name, but Quark's actor, when they had Ferengi-centric episodes, would call everyone over to his place and they would run through the episodes beforehand. And so those episodes have a level of polish too, because the actors have been running their lines together beforehand. They've really workshopped everything, and they have this beautiful humor to them. And I don't know. I thought I would hate
the character like arc of all the Ferengi is really good. I think they mention it in that documentary that like they're just kind of like rando side characters, and they have more character growth than like main characters do in most other shows.
I mean, Rom goes from being Quark's young, like kind of supposedly stupider younger brother, to then be exposing that he's actually a genius engineer, to becoming a union leader, to becoming the leader of the Ferengi race. Like, that's an arc.
That is an arc. They're also the Roswell aliens.
They're also the Roswell aliens.
Nog, too. Nog is also really remarkable in terms of his character growth, and I find him to be very precious. He goes from being this, like, rascal child who, like, can't even conscience the thought of being friends with Jake Sisko to being his best friend, a respected Starfleet officer and veteran. And that episode that we brought up earlier in which he loses his leg and is struggling with that was... I wouldn't have expected a side character, admittedly, like Nog, to receive that kind of attention. But I'm so glad that they put that in. It was such an amazing little anecdote in the midst of everything else.
Yes.
The last thing I was expecting was definitely Nog gets PTSD. That was like that's like bottom 3 on the list of things I expected from DS9, but it happened and it was pretty good. So
I wouldn't have ever have expected it from his introduction in season 1 either. I thought that they would, I don't know, maybe like turn him into a red shirt basically. So
I mean, he's got, like, he starts off self-sealing stem bolts. He ends...
Vulcan stole my homework.
Stole my homework.
And because they don't have ethics.
And he ends up having this incredible arc. I think Nog is also one of my favorite characters, where he has that incredible scene early with Sisko where he's trying to... Because the Ferengi aren't part of the Federation of Planets, he can't just join Starfleet. He needs a recommendation letter, which he's trying to get from Sisko. In the whole episode, Sisko is trying to figure out, why does this Ferengi kid want to join Starfleet? And then eventually, when Nog tells him, when he's finally cornered and confronted, is that I don't want to end up like my dad. My dad is bad at business. I'm bad at business. I'm not a good Ferengi. But my dad is this brilliant engineer who has basically thrown his life away trying to be a good Ferengi, and I don't want that for myself. And then he then goes on the arc he does of idolizing the Federation and being all gung-ho about the war to ultimately being injured and having to confront his own mortality? Like, what side character gets to do that?
There's
only one in DS9.
I feel like I could talk about this for a million years because it touches on all kinds of stuff, but I'll try to keep this one brief. You mentioned the self-sealing stem bolts. I think that's like a season 2 episode. It's pretty early.
Maybe even season 1.
It's pretty early on, and the whole episode, if it's something you haven't seen before, is basically Quark, who is Nog's uncle. He gets the wrong shipment of like yamek sauce, I think it is, which is like a Cardassian condiment that nobody else likes.
That sounds
right. He's like, oh, what am I going to do with this? Nog, being raised as a Ferengi, goes, well, maybe we can trade this for something and make some profit. And he gets like Jake wrapped up in it. And it's one of those, there's like a name for this, but where you try to like, they trade the yamek sauce for one thing so they can trade it for another thing so they can trade it for another thing. And one of those is self-sealing stem bolts. And it's like a comedy of errors kind of thing. And it ends up being like kind of fucked up. I think it like ends up being okay, but they don't make the big profit they were trying to make. So
they end up with a plot of land, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
That they then sell back to Quark.
Yeah.
Because it's this one piece of land that he needs for some business scheme.
That is true, yes. So whatever it is, 5 or 6 seasons later, episode 6 of season 7, there's an episode where there's something wrong with the like gravity plating or something on the Defiant. And Cisco's like, well, I'm going to be away for 3 days. O'Brien, fix that shit before I get back. And he's like, fucking okay, man, but we need this one part, which we don't have, and we can't just go get one. So, like, I don't know what you want me to do. And Nog's like, don't worry, Chief, I got this. All I need is your access codes. And so O'Brien gives him his, like, it's not an access code, but it's basically that. He gives him his access codes. And, you know, throughout the episode, O'Brien's like, where the hell is Nog? And somebody's like, oh, he went out to this place to like do a thing. And then that episode, Nog like takes something like some like vitally important part. Like it's not just like some nothing thing that doesn't matter. It's like, oh,
he takes Cisco's desk.
Oh
Cisco's
yeah,
desk.
he takes Cisco's desk and he gives that to a guy so he can take a photo with it. And then that guy gives him some other spaceship part, and O'Brien's like, we don't need one of those. He's like, yeah, but this ship does. Oh, and they're going to give us the gravity plating. No, they're going to give us a quadratic phase array. And O'Brien just like loses his shit. Like, we don't need a quadratic phase array. And he's like, no, but this other ship does, and they'll give us the gravity plating. And it actually works out. And Nog like does the whole thing, gets the parts, and finishes the repair, and saves O'Brien's ass in time for Cisco to get back from whatever his trip was. I really like those
Just
little
in the nick of
callback
time.
episodes like that.
They have a lot of those in DS9. A bit I like. I've been talking a lot, so I'll keep this one very brief. There's an arc, I guess a subplot, where everyone gets really into darts. And Julian Bashir, having been genetically modified, but once it kind of comes to light, like how modified he is, O'Brien makes him stand further back when they play darts. And then later on in season 7, there's a callback where they're doing some grand plot to basically mind probe a secret agent to find out state secrets. O'Brien walks into the bar that's all dark except for Julian, who's broken in and is standing there playing darts, and he's standing further back even by himself. And like just the little continuity of that, what I thought was always very funny. And the show's so good about that, of like little callbacks and little pieces that make it feel very rich and alive.
I think it's interesting how outwardly horny the Ferengi are, especially for, you know, a show that came out in the 90s. There's an early-ish, it's like season 3 or 4 episode where it starts out, you know, on TNG, they always would have those scenes with the crew playing poker with each other. So in DS9 they play Tongo, which is some Ferengi card game, and Jadzia is just like cleaning up the Ferengi at their own card game. And there's some part where I don't know, they make some joke about like betting on like a woman or like, oh, well, like win your clothes or win your companionship or something like that. And Jadzia is like, oh, you know, I'm not like your Ferengi women, docile and something and naked. You know, you don't really like women like that anyway, do you? And Quark's like, oh yeah, I do. And he just has the most like lecherous delivery on it. And I don't know, it's just funny that they gotta like, you know, it's a bad aspect of Ferengi culture, and Rom destroys their culture and becomes their new communist god later on. But like, it's funny that they let them get away with that on TV in 1993.
Yeah.
I was going back and watching through some episodes, and the very first frame on one of them, I forget which one it is, but it's Rom and Lita talking about their wedding that's coming up. And they're looking at like wedding dresses, and it's only in frame for like less than a second, but they're holding one of their like little tablets, and it's a wedding dress. It's basically like, it's like a frilly bikini, and like that's it. And it's just I never noticed it, but I turned on the episode and I paused it and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense.
Ferengi, I guess, except for Moogie. Also one of the best sidekicks.
Al
Moogie. So Quark, if you're gonna move in with me, how long are we talking? A day? A week?
For context,
Mugi is Ram and Quark's mother, who is also the brilliant mind behind the entire Ferengi financial empire. So they have a hierarchical society where women basically don't have rights, but Mugi is not only the secret lover of their before Ram becomes the communist god, or the Grand Nagazek, who is played by the inconceivable guy from Princess Bride. But Mugi is secretly telling him everything to do, and whereas Ferengi women are supposed to be naked, she wears clothes, and she is really what starts this pivot to communist Ferengi culture, and then probably is really the person who crowns Ram to be like, you need to lead this new kinder Ferenginar. It's going to be great. We're gonna save the environment, and everyone's going to get health care. So just imagine that. Just imagine that.
Yeah, by the end of...
The tension... Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the tension
I've been talking
that they introduced... Oh, no worries. The tension that they introduce between these hierarchical parts of Ferengi society also comes through in that episode with Pel, which I was only halfway paying attention to the first time I watched it, I'm gonna be honest. But the second time, my eyes were on the screen for the whole episode. And the, it's probably the inherent transness in me that makes me like cross-dressing episodes, but there's the whole thing with Pel sort of infiltrating Ferengi male society in order to make something of herself because she knows that she is more than what society deems her to be. And the whole arc where she is the principal negotiator for Quark's business deal in the Gamma Quadrant during that episode really sort of it puts you on the side of change in Ferengi society, because I feel like in the early parts of the show, it's really sort of played up for laughs that the Ferengis are so like backward, I guess. But her episode and all the episodes with Mugi really place this tension at the forefront, and it actually kind of gets resolved thanks to Rom. Yeah. You love to see it.
We love Rom.
Yeah, by the end of the series, Quark, like I said, he starts out just like ridiculously lecherous, and it's definitely played up for laughs, like you said. But then near the end, there's a part where like Ezri, I think Quark hears like a rumor or something that she's going to get back together with Worf, which is also, by the way, illegal according to Trill law. You can't get like re-involved with a past partner from one of your past lives. And Quark's like, Ezri, you can't do it. That's fucked up. Like, he doesn't respect you. He'd just be getting back to you because he thinks you're Jadzia and you're not. And you don't want to get with somebody who just inherited your heart. You want to be with somebody who earns it. Just like, don't do it. And she's like, Quark, that was the sweetest and most embarrassing for you thing I've ever heard. But he like really comes around, and like they all kind of like really become better people over the course of the show.
I love the Ferengi.
They've got great arcs.
They...
That was my one-off comment.
Yeah.
They even start to all like root beer.
Oh, the root beer scene?
Right.
That's my like
oh my God.
The best scene of the show, free for me.
That's top 3 for me. I love it so much. The way Garrett says, it's insidious.
I forgot about that scene.
You forgot about the root beer scene.
I forgot about the root beer scene. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The way that you won't let me forget about O'Brien and Bashir singing sea shanties, I won't let you forget about the root beer scene.
Please keep me accountable. So, I know we're at like an hour 20. I don't know what y'all like. Do you want to keep doing this, or do you maybe want to pivot to talking about strengths or weaknesses? Because rejoining just came up, and that's an episode that I think is kind of one of the bits that I think is a weakness of the show.
We can talk about the good things about Deep Space Nine all day.
Yeah. What's up, Alex?
Yeah. I think just one thing that I really liked about the show, since we've kind of been talking about, different races and things like that, and I know Vince kind of mentioned this earlier, is that like, so if you compare it to like TNG, right? So both of the shows are diverse, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have in TNG, you have humans, you've got a Klingon, you've got a Betazoid, you've got an android, and all sorts of that. But they're all Starfleet officers, right? So at the end of the day, there's a chain of command. They all have to respect each other and talk to each other in a very sterile way, because that's what is required of them because of their commission and their post. Whereas, on Deep Space Nine, it's much more lawless. Like the only respect that you have to show to Odo is enough to not get thrown in the slammer. And that shows in all of their, like, it allows all the characters to be loose and snarky with each other that you don't have. And that's one of the things that really kind of drew me in at first with their writing, is they just kind of allow, like, with so many different cultures and so many motivations and so many different goals between the characters, and since they don't have to all share goals in most cases, except, not being eradicated by the Dominion, there's like a looseness that was kind of allowed in the writing between all those characters. Then I think that's one of the things that really kind of pulled me in early on for a lot of it.
There's one scene where, was it Quark comes into Sisko's office and starts complaining about something, and Sisko is like, you ever consider how much, if I started charging you rent, how much back rent you would owe me? And he just immediately drops it. You get it because of that. Like, they're not officers. There's a tension through that where they don't all share the same goals all the time.
I mean, Sisko's obviously an officer, but Quark is not. So Quark can come in
and there was
and do a little shit.
Yeah, there was one episode that I had kind of below like a top 3, but it's Second Skin, which is the one where they kidnap Nerys and they make her look like a Cardassian, and she's supposed to be like someone, to Kenny Gamore's daughter. I rewatched that one because I really enjoyed it, and there's a part where they're in Odo's office, and because Garrick is like, I think I know where she's at, and Sisko was like, okay, well, me, you, and Odo are gonna go get her, and Garrick's like, what do you mean, all 3 of us? And he's like, well, basically, Bajor wants you off the station, put all these politics. He's like, if you do that, you could probably, stay here where it's safe for you. And Garrick says, Commander, this is extortion. And Sisko just he's in a swivel chair and he looks around and he goes, yes, it is. like a Starfleet captain. Like, he's just like, yes, this is extortion. Enjoy it.
That is such a good episode, Second Skin. I tried to sit down and make a list, and it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to pick 10.
Yeah, I think the only real oddball episodes that I think, outside of like Far Beyond Our Stars and In the Pale Moonlight, I think Second Skin might make my top 10. I really like the Bashir gifted child arc as well, which is, was an interesting bit. I really like the episode where he tries and fails to develop a cure for a disease, but ends up creating a vaccine that will inoculate future generations, but everyone that's alive that he's developed relationships with will die of this disease. And at first I was like, okay, he's a perfectionist, whatever. And then you find out that he's genetically modified and everything, and it made me rethink some of the earlier episodes. And also how much of a shit he is till he turns 30, because everyone knows that until you turn 30, you're basically a baby.
I felt that episode hard.
So did I. I'm 30. What have I done?
Starts rapidly aging.
Oh yeah, that was fucked up.
That was really funny.
That's how I felt every day since I turned 30. Every day I'm one giant leap closer to death.
Babe.
At what point do I out myself as 24?
Morgan has passed away.
Time comes for all of us. It will come for you.
I welcome it. I embrace it with open arms.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Who would do that? You say that till you wake up hungover despite the fact that you weren't drinking.
Don't drink.
I didn't! I was just hungover. Well, anyway, like we could keep going on, and I'm happy to go on talking about good things in Deep Space Nine. But one thing I do want to talk about, and I think is a missed opportunity in Deep Space Nine, is its depictions. It kind of flirts with the idea of having gay characters without ever really having any. We get the aggressively homoerotic bits with Garrick. We get, I guess in Rejoining, we do get a kiss between two women. But then it's kind of dropped, and at that point, Jadzia becomes ultimately Worf's wife, and it's just one of those bits that it's kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and when watching the documentary, it's something they specifically highlight in the writer's room. They were like, we don't think we did a good job with this. We should have done better. We should have taken that little seed with Garrick and Bashir and let that go over 7 seasons and had this very developed relationship between these two men. Like, that could have been interesting. It's a weird bit for me, and I'm curious what everyone else thinks about that, or like other.
I'm sorry, I just had the strangest image. So it's like the second to last episode, and it starts with Bashir rolling over in bed, and he sees Ezri. Right, just imagining that being different. You roll over, the camera pans over, he says, "Hello, Doctor."
Why,
with the wide eyes?
It'd be good though.
Oh. Imagine, for a moment, Julian wakes up, he hears the sound of someone cooking. He walks out of his bedroom, and there's Garrick in a naked apron cooking eggs.
Hello, Doctor.
Good morning, Doctor. Like, it's goofy, but I would love to have seen it, because it also would have saved us from that terrible romance between Garrick and Ziyal.
I do think we have to give the show some credit, though,
Yeah,
in that
some,
area. Like, they do a good job, and especially with Rejoined specifically, which is this episode where Jadzia basically, to make a long story short, kind of gets back together with her ex-wife from a previous host. Mm-hmm. And now they're both in new hosts, and they're kind of meeting each other again as new people, but they're also old people who used to know each other, who used to be married. And because of taboos in Trill society, they can't be together, and that ultimately kind of breaks them up. But it is the first episode of Star Trek where you have a same-sex kiss on screen. And that episode, which was also directed by Avery Brooks.
Bless him.
Great guy.
Noted lesbian ally, Avery Brooks.
Great. Well, and specifically, like, I want to bring that up because one of the things that Avery Brooks did in that production was he was very careful to make sure that this kiss between them did not get sensationalized in the media and the way this episode was promoted. He wanted it to be a very, like, pure love story, and it succeeds on that front. It's just a very sad one. So, it's one of those, like, they do well for the time, but there's also, especially watching it now, like we were saying, you see a lot of areas that are missed opportunities.
I just want the lizard boy to kiss.
I know.
I just want the lizard boy to kiss the doctor boy. Like, I need it. You can't give me that scene. Oh, so you have heard of me. And Julian stammering, trying to sip his tea, and he calls Garrick sir.
It's a great scene.
Just Bashir giving him a kiss in the spoon.
We were deprived, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good for the time. But it is one of those things where you look at it and you're like, I really wish that there was just like, I got a taste, but like I want the whole thing.
Don't give me crumbs, I want the cake.
Mm-hmm. It's so like, because it's not in any of like the main lines, right? It's very circumstantial. It's like, oh, okay, these two Trill happen to meet each other, or it's literally somebody in a parallel universe. There's one bisexual person, and they are in a parallel.
There are
universe.
several bisexual people in that universe,
and it's
in the evil universe.
Yeah, okay,
and it's evil.
That's fair.
Oh, you mean
Yeah,
Kira? Evil Ezri is
evil
also
Ezri.
gay.
And so is evil Leah. Lita.
Yeah, no, you're evil and gay in the mirror universe.
It's the better universe.
As is tradition.
A universe of being gay and doing crimes.
And wearing gloves. Ooh.
Yes.
And tinfoil tiaras. If you're Intendant Kira Nerys. That's a great costuming choice, though.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was. It was good.
Okay,
It was
fine.
brilliant.
She pulls it off.
Okay,
She
honey.
pulls it off.
Okay, honey. I'll get you a tinfoil tiara.
Don't. I can't pull it off.
I think it's iconic. I also rewatched a bit of that earlier, and the moment where they meet, she goes, "Who are you?" She goes, "I'm Kira Nerys," and she just delightedly says, "That makes two of us." Just giddy. Sorry.
No, it's great.
But if you can't love me, who? If I can't, or was it if I can't love me, who can? Or something. Intendant Kira is the better Kira.
Answering the question of would you fuck your clone?
Yeah, she dares to go. The answer is yes.
She is not a coward. Proving the Mirrorverse gayness theme also, I recently rewatched that episode where Garrick gets taken prisoner, I guess, by Worf in the Mirrorverse for abandoning his post during that whole thing where Kira also got captured by Mirror Cisco, I guess. And that whole scene is just the vibes of it. I didn't expect to like that, but yeah, Worf has Garrick like in a collar on his deck and is holding the chain, and it's like, show you are horny.
My God. Mirrorverse episodes are just like, whenever they came up, I'm like, I need to go get either a drink or a coffee or something. Like, I need something to get me through this, because something is going to happen that I'm not ready for.
Can never be ready.
There's a lot of
I never was.
weird episodes in DS9 for as serious a show as it is. There's like, I mean, there's Mirror Universe episodes. There's all those episodes where they're just, Our Man Bashir has nothing to do with the plot.
It's a great episode.
There's an entire episode where like they're like, yeah, fuck the plot. Esri flies away home and deals with her stupid bushy family.
There's baseball.
Baseball's a wonderful.
I was going to bring
they
that
play
up.
baseball.
You were talking about things we don't like about DS9. I hate the baseball episode.
No.
I borderline skipped it this time through.
I'm not a huge fan of Holospeed episodes, but when they start giving chatter and it's like three of them, it's like Cisco go, "Hey, better," and Lita's like, "Hey, better." Worf goes, "Death to your enemies."
Yeah,
it
has some good moments, but I don't know. I was just watching it like I was just really ready for it to be over, and also it just seems stupid to me. A team of humans clearly are going to get body bagged by a team of Vulcans at baseball, like.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah, but like Cisco's all like, no, we can totally beat them, guys. Like a Vulcan can pick you up and throw you, bro. You can't. I don't know. That episode does not do
He's
it for
fighting
me.
the good fight.
The baseball episode hits me in the found family trope, which Deep Space Nine doesn't actually do a lot. Relative to like Voyager, which is one of my other favorites. So that is one of the reasons that I like it a lot. But it is a goofy episode.
I just like it for Odo's performance as the umpire.
I do really like when Cisco just
we
like
don't
hands
talk
him a
about
rule book and then he goes and like practices his poses and stuff.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
those scenes are exceptional. Where he's like he's in the mirror practicing his like "you're out of there's" and stuff, and he just hands it up real hard.
Odo's mannerisms are so good throughout. Another one that I saw when I was going back through, there's one where Cisco's cooking and he's stirring something, and he hands the bowl to Odo because he has to attend to something else, and he grabs the bowl and the whisk, and he starts moving the bowl instead of the whisk, and he's like, no, let me help you. It's so good.
It's a good show.
We're talking about weaknesses, though.
I know,
guess.
and we just circled back to talking about
It's
baseball.
It's hard not to. I have a weakness though, that I've got a thing that grinds my gears, which is the way, especially towards the end of the series, that the show treats Bajoran religion. Because it becomes literally true, which is just a bad writing decision to begin with. There's some good bits early on where there's this tension between, the Bajoran people believe that the wormhole aliens are gods, but maybe they're just aliens that exist outside of time. And it's sort of there isn't a right answer to that question. So the show, at a certain point, decides that there is a right answer to that question. And the right answer is that they are gods, and they introduce this big, good versus evil fight almost out of nowhere, where now there are also, literal demons in Bajoran religion. And it makes the religion in general kind of fall flat for me. It turns it into this weird, kind of pseudo-Christian thing where it wasn't necessarily at the beginning. And I actually think in that documentary, when they're talking about things they did well and things they didn't do well, they were like, we did religion pretty well. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You did not. So that's something that I would like to see better. I'd like to see a version of Deep Space Nine where they approach that from just a different perspective, from the perspective of someone who isn't... It reads to me as if it's written by kind of a bunch of, ex-Protestant atheists, if you know what I mean. And it would just be... It would have been nice to see that written a little differently.
I think that's a weird thing that happens a lot in sci-fi. Totally different show, but if you ever watched Battlestar Galactica, the remake?
I haven't seen
it. So that it has a similar problem, and I feel like there's another show too that's escaping me, but where they'll have something that's kind of set up like that, where it could be this, or it could be that, or it could be this third thing, and they have all these possibilities that it could be, and they really leave it open to interpretation about which one you really think it is, and then they'll get to the last 5 seconds of the show and be like, no, yeah, we said all that, but it was literally Jesus the whole time, or it was it was just this alien the whole time, and they really give you a definite answer at the end, and it kind of ruins it a little bit.
That's what they do with Quantum Leap too. Another show that's at the end, it's it was Jesus the whole time.
Also, I was thinking about that earlier, and whatever, fine. The wormhole aliens can be basically they exist outside of time. They can manipulate our universe in crazy ways, but how come none of these god aliens in Star Trek ever have any interaction with each other? Because that's a little bit weird, but also there's the Q, and then there's the entire first season of TNG where every other episode there's the crystalline entity, which has some ridiculously world universe altering powers like that. There's that dude who he's oh yeah, we just used to live on this planet, and then these other aliens came and they were genociding our people, so I used my alien god power to delete them from existence. And there's the one who creates an entire alternate universe specifically to capture the Enterprise inside of it. There are these god aliens in Star Trek, but they never talk, and it's kind of weird.
They've all just kind of been you're over here and I'm over here, and we're chill.
They've got their own jurisdictions. It feels like.
There's also the Borg God particle, which I'm blanking on the name of right now.
I think it might just be the God particle, the Omega particle or something.
Yeah, the Omega
in Voyager.
Yes,
something.
And that doesn't. It doesn't show up anywhere else because it's a Voyager thing. But also, I would love to know what that does for all the rest of these extremely powerful entities that inhabit this universe. Is that
Alex, you
useful?
You had something there too?
Oh, I was going to say, keep in mind, most of those are just all in the Alpha Quadrant.
That's true.
It's not even all of TNG happens in the Alpha Quadrant, right? We don't get to the Gamma Quadrant until DS9, and then the Delta Quadrant and Voyager. So I guess space is big, so maybe these omnipotent things are compartmentalized omnipotence, which doesn't make any sense, but I'm just talking, I don't know.
No, it's fair. It's something I'd never thought about of how does this all fit in a universe?
Yeah,
it is weird.
I could see them not really being in regular contact with each other, because whatever, they have god alien things to attend to. But it is a little bit weird that you've got the wormhole aliens who can control time. Like, not even control time. It's just like they exist in all time. So, they manipulated Cisco's birth, and like really all of these events were foretold for them. They make that entire fleet disappear. Like, they're ridiculous, right? And then you get to any other Star Trek episode and you just never see them again. Like, nobody cares. Nobody brings it up. Hey, remember the weird god aliens in the wormholes that we can just like drive to anytime we want? Yeah, we don't talk about them.
Yeah, like the whole bit where they manipulate Cisco's birth is not only weird and uncomfortable to me, like it's really not okay.
It's rapey.
It's really rapey, but it means they have influence on Earth. Like,
why?
They've been to Earth, and it's like, but it's never mentioned anywhere that these time-traveling god aliens just like sometimes just interfere in these wild ways, but it's never mentioned or brought up anywhere else. They're dicks, actually.
Like, I'd almost be kind of okay with it if the weird god aliens all had their own specific niche obsession, and the wormhole aliens' specific niche obsession was with Bajor. Whereas the TNG ones had a niche obsession with, creating and destroying, like, a single world. For the heck of it, why not? But it's not like that. Particularly with these ones, they are so all-powerful that it seems to flatten things for me, in a way. I love Gul Dukat, which I was going to mention earlier. And I'm glad that everyone else said it first so that I don't feel like hugely problematic.
He's a problematic fave.
But he's excellent. And at the point where, there was this whole Pa-Wraith cult that he was leading and was being, a total, like, how to put it, just a complete liar to all these people who were following him and trying to establish himself as like this cult leader. I thought that was kind of fun and cool, and then he became the literal Antichrist, and I was like, wow, suddenly I don't care about you anymore. Jeez, I hope you die.
It's a weird ending, and, we alluded to this, I think, earlier. I think it was on the recording. It's been almost 2 hours. But, like, Kai Wynn is the Pope of the Bajoran religion, and over the course of one conversation with Kira, she goes from believing in the prophets...
No. It's not one conversation. I have to stop you there, because it's her entire career as Kai. She is indignant that the prophets have never spoken to her, and that instead they speak to Sisko, who is the emissary, and has been the emissary since episode 1, because it's literally called Emissary. Of the entire series. So like that the religion thing was a long play. Like that's been there. So
I'll concede.
It wasn't just 30 seconds. It was funny to see it. Like, it was funny to see the brain click to be like, oh, I have to talk to Satan now. Like, that part was funny, but like it's literally her whole career.
She goes from fake it till you make it, and then in that conversation immediately switches to, I can't fake it, so I guess I'll worship Satan instead, which is like a weird thing to pivot to.
Let's bake it.
All right, I stand corrected. I concede that. Yes, it is a long play, and it's the click is just the weird bit. And I think one of the hard bits, particularly where a lot of the weird Pa-Wraith stuff happens, is apparently they thought they were going to get an 8th season. And I feel like the end of the Dominion War was supposed to be season 7, and then season 8 was going to be the Pa-Wraith stuff. But instead they were like, shit, we have to condense all this Pa-Wraith stuff and all this Dominion War stuff, and they didn't expect to lose Jadzia because that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
So they also had to episodes had to go to establishing Ezri. So you get season 7 is not well paced.
She gets a lot of episodes in that season,
and there's some of the best.
A lot.
I mean, it's good because I really like Ezri, but probably like half that season is Ezri episodes, or at least Ezri adjacent episodes.
It's half Ezri. The final 10 episodes from Penumbra to the end, which is like just the whole conclusion, and then baseball and Dick Fontaine, and that's it. That's the whole 7th season.
And Pa-Wraiths for some reason.
The Pa-Wraiths speak to me.
I how good is that episode 8
Love
pitch from the documentary though?
I didn't like it
Season 8 pitch.
personally.
I haven't seen the documentary, so unless you're just
highly
I haven't
recommend
either.
the things we left
Strong
behind.
recommend. It's yeah.
Part of it is they talk about like, I mean, yeah, that, you know, if we could come back today and do a season 8, like what would it be? And it's really, really good. I guess I won't tell you what it is since you haven't seen it, but
Yeah, it would be.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm excited.
It's good, and the stuff that comes through in the documentary is definitely was really illuminating. Like I didn't know those bits about like the Ferengi actors getting together before recording, and then it's like, oh, that makes sense about like why they gelled so well and why all their bits seem so good, because they were just always they would hang out beforehand. Yeah, that's what I got. It's a good show. Baseball's a good game. Cisco's a good boy. We don't deserve O'Brien.
It's a good show.
Stan Garrick.
We love a simple Taylor.
Absolutely. A simple Taylor.
And it remains really interesting in the Star Trek universe for the setting, and a lot of the things it did were really interesting for the time, and it's a show that I would recommend to anyone who likes any kind of science fiction at all, honestly.
yeah, some of the stuff.
Or if you like the...
Oh, sorry, your video cut out
No,
again.
go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
No, you were in the middle of something. Continue. I just
No, I was
lost
not.
video, so I
was
couldn't
gonna
tell.
I was going to yell about the Irish for a second. Vince, go on. Save the pod.
I was distracted and I forgot what I was going to say. What were we talking about? Oh, a lot of the stuff that I talked about is actually, I've seen this show like 4 times because I saw the original run with my mom. I kind of saw most of it again with some friends I was living with for a while. I just straight rewatched it a few years ago. And then this year I've had it on when I'm going to sleep, so I've been kind of like semi-rewatching it this time. And a lot of that stuff I talked about, like I never noticed until this time through. So there's a lot to dig into if you've never seen it. You can watch it for the next 20 years and you'll keep finding new things.
Yeah.
I think, if I were to watch it again, which will probably happen at some point, I'm sure I would see new things and like little bits, because the actors bring so much to those characters and have so much room to let things breathe that you get these little character moments and these little interactions and you're like, ooh, that's a spicy nugget right there. Like that one blooper at the end with Quark and Odo.
Oh my goodness. Y'all should look that up if you haven't seen it.
Has anyone seen this? The alt take of the goodbye between Quark and Odo at the end?
I haven't.
Don't
now
specifically
I have to.
remember it.
I don't think I know.
You should look it up. It's
You should.
good. It's good.
You should.
Yeah.
Given
All right.
the fact, just given the fact that the average episode of DS9 is good, I think that pretty much everyone should give it a shot. You know, why not? There are barely any episodes that I can think of that I really despise, and that's pretty rare for TV, especially a series as long as this one. So, you know, it's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a good one. All right.
There is one episode about gamers, but other than that, it's good.
Not the gamer episode. Oh.
Wait, which
Fourth
one is
shop. It's the very first. It's like episode 10 when they make first contact. It's like Cisco's first contact, and they come to the station, and like 7 people walk on in there in robes, and he's like, "Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you." And the dude just goes, "Where are the games?" And they play that weird game where they get transported.
Into the board game.
Like Quark has to play them into the board game. Yeah, it's Alamo.
I forgot about the Jumanji episode.
You forgot about the Jumanji episode.
How could you
How
forget?
could
Forgot about the gamers.
Fucking gamers.
That's a great episode. I don't know what y'all are talking about. I love it. I love the Alamo episode.
The door is right there.
You couldn't even remember it until a second ago. You can't have strong
I
feelings.
blocked it from my memory. That's how strong it is. Hate gamers.
It's a good show, though. Overall.
Despite the gamers.
Any final thoughts?
I think final thoughts have kind of come out. We stand Garrick. this show, one final thought I have, the show is racist against the Irish because it keeps fucking with O'Brien in the worst ways. Like every episode with O'Brien, there's a long stretch in there where I'm just like, how are they going to make his life worse?
And they do every time.
Every single time. Just even in the far future, people are still racist against the Irish.
They even admitted that his relative who formed a union got killed for it.
Yeah,
So
I forgot about that.
We just yeah, that's it. I think we can end there. Usually when we have an ending here, we just kind of say if you have anything you want to plug, or if you want to tell people where they can find you at any point. If you don't, that's cool. Some people don't want to be found, but yeah, I'm Morgan. You can find me on Twitter at Morganization13, and I just want to thank you all for being part of this. If you want to kind of say goodbye in your own way, go ahead. I'm checked out.
You're gone. I don't want to be found, but sometimes you can see me in Morgan's Twitter. So
That's real.
It's true.
Yeah, it is real.
Yeah, so this has been fun.
Yeah.
I dare you to find me on Twitter. I dare you. Thanks for inviting me, though. This was a lot of fun. I'm really glad that I could participate. I love this show, and it's great to talk with other people who do too.
Alex and Vin.
Sorry. Also, thank you very much. I appreciate this show quite a bit, and I'm also have been very excited to talk to people about it. So this has been quite a lot of fun. If you want to watch me be annoying on Twitter, you may. It's at AwexWayne, AWEXWANE. Yeah, maybe I'll see you there. And Morgan, you know how you have to end this podcast, right?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Imagine you're Captain Benjamin Sisko.
Oh, yeah.
You just made a confessional. Okay, yeah, all right.
Okay, I don't find me, but do go to Yase.world and join our Discord where we can yell about how good DS9 is forever.
Forever. And with that, if I could do this pod again, I would. Podcatcher, delete that entire recording.